Right. All right.
Alrighty.
Welcome everyone to our second episode of From Here to There. Thank you for joining. Thank you to Yazmon for being our star of the day. Yazmon.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I love it. I must preface, Yazmon is a buddy. I had the honor of being at University of Michigan at the same time as a graduate student, while Yazmon was an undergraduate student. We worked together in Stamps and Color. And I'm just in awe of her journey and her growth. And I'm so excited to just dive into it and dig into it for all of you to learn from. Just to preface again, for those who are maybe joining us for the first time, From Here to There is all about highlighting creative students or creatives who were once students and really highlighting their stories. You know, how did they get into their jobs, into their careers, literally all the tiny little nuts and bolts of their journey post-graduating. This is a safe space. We definitely want to have open transparency. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll be able to do Q&A with Yazmon at the end. All right. So Yazmon, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Nice. Just getting off work, and we'll probably go back after.
All right. Sounds like we're going to need to talk about work-life boundaries, but that's okay. Let's start with, where are you from?
I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Like Detroit, born and bred.
Proper Detroit, not tourist Detroit?
No. Detroit.
Tell us a little bit about proper Detroit. What's the difference? What's proper Detroit?
Well, I think, it's mostly, I guess it's so hard to define, but the way that I would see Detroit is like, it's mostly in the people who are born there rather than like, the people who are born there, and we have like a sort of like written authenticity to the place. And I guess that's mostly like really beckoning back from like times in Motown and like, that's the best way I could describe it.
I dig it. I'll take that. All right. So you went to University of Michigan. Tell us about your time there. What made you decide to go?
What made me decide to go to Michigan? Well, mostly like in high school, we had like majors. We had like our own majors, and like mine was in art. And like knowing University of Michigan, I'm like, okay, so this is like the major university. So I like did a little research. I think I was like a junior or like a sophomore at the time. And I went to like the pre-college camps. So I was like here for like 2 summers before like coming in. Now I got like a full experience of like, oh, this is what a college student here is like. And I know all the faculty already, so I might as well just go here. And that was like a large proponent of like why I came to UMich.
Nice. Yeah. Now, do you know going in that you wanted to do art or something creative?
Oh, absolutely. I initially, like, I knew that I wanted to do like animation. Okay, I just wasn't quite sure like how I was going to do animation, but like I was like, okay, so like the curriculum is kind of like plug and play, or like it's modifiable, so I'll just try to make it work as best as I can while I'm here.
The formal term is interdisciplinary.
That.
But yes, it does allow you to be very flexible. But I think, like you said, knowing from the forefront what you want it to do definitely makes it easier with picking classes, I would imagine, or figuring out what faculty you want to get really close to and learn the most from.
Oh, absolutely. Like even coming in, like I knew I mostly wanted to be like in animation or like in the motion graphic space. But I even had like some doubt, and I think like a lot of art majors do when they come in, it's like, oh, I don't know if I can actually do this as a career or not. Let me like look into other spaces too. So I was like looking at the engineering school of all places.
It's because they're next door.
Right. It's like you guys are across the street. Like, let me get like a minor over here, like just in case. But yeah, I think I think, you know, having that interdisciplinary like experience like really fully informed my my time in Michigan.
Did you ever pursue the minor?
I did. I do have a minor in multidisciplinary design.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that part. All right.
Yeah.
What would you say, and it's okay if it's more than one, but you know, what are some classes that really played a role in helping you figure out what it is you wanted to do career-wise and what kind of job you'd be into?
I would have to say like a lot of the introductory courses. I can't quite place the name of them right now, but they're taught by Heidi and Amelia White, or Heidi Cuomo and Amelia White. I feel like I got just a feel of how to do like storytelling, how storytelling like intersects with art, but also like how can it go from just movies or just like long form? How could I possibly make this into like, how do you tell a full story in 30 seconds? Which really helps me in my day-to-day now.
I love it. So let's fast forward to your senior year. You were at Michigan for 4 years, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what was your senior year like? What was that pressure? Was there any pressure to like leave and find a job? What was going on?
Oh, the pressure was on. Who? I have flashbacks to this day. But no, like I think a lot of the pressure was just like, you know, really formulating how in the world are you going to live outside of this campus. And that that and like the senior project are the IP, trying to figure that out at the same time. So it's like a lot of pressures coming from like different angles, but at a certain point, like I want to say like second semester, I was like looking at my IP project and like looking at all my other responsibilities and like really was like trying to prioritize things because I was like, you know what, I don't have a lot of time and I need to be able to, I guess, leverage the experience that I already have in order to go do something else. So like a lot of my, I want to say both semesters, but mostly the second semester, I was mostly like going out networking with people who were in the field, reaching out to alumni constantly, and then like also like seeking out, okay, if I move here, what's the possibility? Do I know anybody here? Do I have any like prospective leads or anything? So like things like that.
Okay, what are some of the networking opportunities that you found or that you were looking for?
A lot of them were either, well, mostly like the T. Howard Foundation, and I'll always plug them. So they're a foundation that that really puts POC, or people who identify as marginalized identities. They take them and they place them in spaces of entertainment through internships. Like if you get in. So within that, you're like in a pool or like a talent pool of people who are either in marketing or in editing, but they're like at like Warner Media or like at Turner, where I interned at. And I learned like through that, you know, like it's important to get your name on the list or to know someone to like even get a lead. So I think that was like instrumental to my networking during my senior year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you did graduate, did you have any internships prior to graduating? Did you do an internship after you graduated? What was kind of like your immediate next move?
Immediately after graduating? Yeah, no.
She's like, no, I went home.
No, like I stayed in like Ann Arbor for like a good, I want to say month. Yeah, I was in Ann Arbor for like a good month, like just trying to figure out, okay, don't want to stay in Ann Arbor, definitely not going home. So we have to figure out how we're going to do this. So I figured out, okay, so it's either New York or LA. And I was like, well, in New York, I don't need a car. So I guess I'm going to New York. Practical. And then like shortly after, I landed in New York in like a Airbnb for like a month, just like trying to figure it out. And someone came across my name on a list from T. Howard at Nickelodeon, and they were like, "Hey, we need a person." So I want to say like 2 months after graduating, I was at Nickelodeon. Yeah.
Okay, wait, we've got to break some of that down. She did not hop skip her way from Detroit to New York and just immediately land a job at Nickelodeon. How did you finance this trip, ma'am?
Well, I think that's a large part of it. If I didn't finance it, a lot of this would not have been possible, and probably would have been a lot scarier. Much.
Okay, so
more,
how does someone who just graduated
scarier.
from college afford to move themselves from Detroit to? And this was without your parents' assistance.
This is without my parents' assistance.
Yeah. So how'd you make that money?
So I would say like that's. Yeah. So like during my 4 years, I was mostly like working alongside like full-time student. Like I would take like university jobs. Like I've done quite a bit at Michigan.
List
like
them out. I want to know what were some of them. Okay.
Okay.
Marketing
I
at
was
Stamps.
in the marketing department at Stamps.
Okay.
I was at the National Center for Institutional Diversity as a marketing or creative intern.
Okay.
Before that, I was also in Bursley. I was once I was a manager, and before that, I was like just a helper at Bursley Hall. And then I worked security at the stadium.
Okay.
And like security, during the summer, security. Yeah, and I was like working summers, at least 2 summers, like working pre-college at Stamps. So like over those 4 years. So you
were working all those 4 years.
Oh yeah, no, that refund check only goes so far. No, like like sometimes I was working like 32 hours like a week. Like it had to happen, and that's like mostly because like I knew that I really don't have like as much of a fallback plan. Like I know I don't have a trust fund, so I'm like, okay, so I just need to save a certain amount till like after graduation, so I'll be safe for a good little minute until I find what my niche is.
How did you balance? I mean, first, let me just commend you for being proactive, and I know you did have scholarship assistance attending University of Michigan. And she's like, yeah, of course. It's University of Michigan, girl. How else did I afford it?
Oh, absolutely.
No doubt.
Shout out to financial aid, who I was in their office often. Yes.
But I really want to commend you because, lots of people get scholarships, but not everybody gets scholarships and work, Yeah. And I really want to commend you for prioritizing the necessity of needing to save up. Maybe having no idea what you were going to do after graduation, but knowing your financial circumstance, knowing that, you didn't necessarily have any financial fallback for after you were done. Like you knew that you needed to pave your own way. So I really want to just commend you for prioritizing that and for doing that work. I know that you still had a social life. But I think it can be hard for some people to imagine, like, how do I do both? It's one or the other, or how is it tempting to not spend all the money that you're making from these side jobs? So kudos to you. And obviously that allowed you to afford to send yourself to New York to figure it out. So about how much did you end up saving from these side jobs over the course of 4 years?
Over the course of 4 years, about 20,000.
Wow.
And thank you. I appreciate that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this is how you go move to a whole new city where you don't know a lot of people and you don't have a job. Like $20,000 padding. Like, yes. Look at all these claps for you. I love it. No, but it's great. I mean, I know that we're laughing about it, but it really is important. I know so many creatives that, have moved across the country living in their car or couch surfing or whatever. So your proactive actions were a big deal. So, all right, you had your money saved. You bought your plane ticket from Detroit to New York.
Oh, not a plane ticket, Greyhound. That was a 14-hour trip.
Okay, Greyhound. Was Greyhound more affordable?
Oh, absolutely. 10 out of 10. Absolutely.
I'm sure you could probably carry more things with you too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So your 14-hour Greyhound bus ride to New York. So who met you in New York? Did you already know someone that you could stay with? What was that kind of situation?
It kind of, everything happened kind of like serendipitously, actually. Like, okay, so when I got here,
the best things do.
Right. When I got here, I already planned out like a 30-day Airbnb just to like figure things out and like how New York works. Yeah. And yeah, it very much is. The MTA is a whole beast when I first got here. I was in the Bronx.
Okay. So when I first got here. 30-day Airbnb in the Bronx. Okay.
Yeah, 30-day Airbnb in the Bronx. I wasn't quite sure how to like navigate because I didn't know a lot of people here until like I had a few of my friends who are like I was living with before, like in Ann Arbor, happened to move to New York just like a month later. We kind of like went from there. Besides that, like a lot of it was going back on LinkedIn, looking at my like foundation peers and the peers that I had in the T. Howard Foundation. Some of them were in New York, so I was like, okay, let's link up and see what can happen. Nice. You know, and like during that time, I was just like, oh, you know, how do you survive in New York? How do you make money in New York? Like I was fully prepared to be like a barista at Starbucks when I first got here. Not gonna lie to you.
I like it. No, you were totally prepared, and I like how you were able to connect with people, even strangers. You know, from school to connect and to just get advice and pick their brain. I have an address question, just because I've heard this as a common thing in New York and especially in California. So for these job applications, as you were applying to things in New York, were you using your Airbnb address? Because I know it's kind of it's harder to get the job if you're not already there. And sometimes they want proof that you're there. So what was that like when you were applying to things?
You want the honest truth?
Yes, ma'am. We're all honest and transparent here.
Yeah. Safe space. Yeah, I did not use my address at all. I found some address on Google and I was like, yes, I live there, somewhere in Manhattan. And if it was in LA, I chose somewhere in LA. This is like, you know what? If you just have me, like, you need me to walk in the next day, probably won't work best. But maybe if you give me some warning, maybe it can work out. Not sure. But I was like, as long as it'll get me a foot in the door, or at least it won't be like a deterrent.
Sure. No, that's real life right there. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So tell us about some what was the first interview, or I guess let's lead to like what got you to Nick Jr.'s door.
What got me to Nick Jr.'s door? I actually when I first got like the lead on the job, those are for a completely different job.
Okay, so what was it for?
It was for production coordination. So it's not like the creative part. It's more like the people who handle the money and pay the creatives to do what they do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got like an email one day. Actually, it was in my spam. So I was really happy that I checked my spam that day.
Wow.
But yeah, Rebecca Cox, she was a recruiter and she was just like, I saw you on the T. Howard site. Do you want to come in?
Internship plug.
Yes. Exactly. My name was on the list.
Nice.
So she brought me to the office. We interviewed and she was just like, you're more of a creative person than a money person. And I was like, yeah, you're not wrong.
You might have more experience drawing than sales.
Exactly.
Or payroll.
Like, exactly. It's like, I have never done payroll in my life. Not going to lie to you. So she was like,
but okay. You were willing to learn.
I was willing to learn. I was very much willing to learn. And she was like, okay, so maybe we should like try the creative services like department. So at the same time, the PA position just happened to be open at the same time. And she passed my resume over and she was like, hey, you should look at this girl, interview her. So I went on an interview with my current boss, Rick, for Nick Jr. short form brand creative. Had the interview. He was like, hey, so can you start next week? And and it happened.
And you were just like, of course, tell me where to go.
Exactly.
Was your interview at Nick Jr.? Was it at their office?
Oh yeah, it was like in their in the Viacom CBS like cafe.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it's very.
So how much time into you being in New York did you actually get this interview with Nick Jr.? Was it within your 30 days at the Airbnb, or was it?
It was within my 30 days. I got to New York at June 4th, 2019, and I got this job like the 27th of June.
Okay. Wow, you just made
it. Yeah. Like when he first said that, I was like, are you serious? Like, what's the catch?
Now, were they transparent up front, like about what that job paid? Like, was that a part of the discussion? Did you see a job description prior to having that interview? Like, what information did you have going into that interview with Rick?
Yeah, so it was mostly like, okay, so these are the skills you'll need. You'll need to know how to edit, or at least be willing to learn. You need to know how to write to some degree. If you can't, you need to be able to learn. You need to be teachable at least. Yeah, and have like at least know some marketing terms and kind of like how to fuse that in a creative space.
Nice.
Besides that, it was mostly like, okay, so PAs don't get paid that much. Real upfront. He was just like, you'll be able to pay your rent.
That's important.
It's important. Yeah, and just like knowing that, that they were, or that their goal was to grow me, or to like grow their PAs, just like by giving them like more responsibility over time, but more, I guess more space to like move up into the position, like to go from a PA to associate producer to producer and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, your 30 days at your Airbnb ends, and where do you move to? Do you get another Airbnb, or you did something proper since now you got the real job?
I did something proper.
Did you wait for the first paycheck? Or no, you were good because you had savings.
Yeah, I was fine.
She was like, yeah, I just put the down payment on my apartment. I got it.
No, I did have to convince my landlord a bit. I was like, yeah, I just started. Can't promise you anything. But yeah, I went to Brooklyn, Bay Ridge area, which is like very southern Brooklyn. And I like found it on like a Facebook group. Okay. And like, I think that's like how a lot of people in New York like find their way about. It's either like, oddly enough, like Craigslist, sounds sketchy, but very viable, or like Facebook groups.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What is your rent in Brooklyn?
$850.
$850 a month? Mm-hmm. Really? Wait, how many roommates?
That's not a whole room. That's not a whole apartment. That's
okay. I was about to say. I was like, that sounds too affordable. Okay, so that's a bedroom in a larger space.
Yeah, and like sharing with two people.
Okay, that's not bad though. Two people? I thought she was about to say like 4 or 5.
I would not be surprised. I see some people have like 8 roommates. It's like, I don't understand how you do it, but kudos to you.
Are the roommates, are they random individuals, or did you actually find people to room with, or did the apartment place just kind of stick you with someone?
Well, I actually, when I first got here, it was with a random person because I came through sublease, and then like they had an open room, so I had like one of my like college friends like was also looking for a place because they were coming from Michigan to New York. I was like, hey, why don't we just get this place together? So it wasn't like completely like I don't know who I'm living with when I first got here.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you had that opportunity. Great. All right, cool. Well, let's dig into your job at Nick Jr. What were those first few days like? And I really love, in your interview that, they're just all about you being teachable, and not necessarily having everything all at once. I think that's really important, I feel this fear sometimes, imposter syndrome is very real. We can read a job description and we can think that we're not good enough, or we don't have all of the skills listed and only a few. So let Yazmon's experience inspire you that you can still qualify. I think sometimes employers definitely want some or most, of the things listed on the list. It's just kind of like their wish list, but at the end of the day, they need that job filled. So that's great. So tell us about your, the first few days at Nick Jr.
It was honestly like drinking water from a fire hydrant. It's the best way I can explain that to you.
Oh my goodness. A lot of information.
A lot of information, a lot of like corporate acronyms just flying everywhere. And just asking a lot of questions and like just normal onboarding stuff. So at least like within my first few days, like I was already like editing a few like short form things, but not necessarily like for on air. It was like, okay, this is how you produce a spot, like basics with like the fellow PA and like the production managers, and I guess like more so producing content for like internal more than external, and eventually like working my way up to like, okay, here's a 30-second spot, here's a 15-second spot that'll actually air and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was someone like checking your progress or checking your work? Or were you just like, here, go do this?
Yeah, it's more like, here, go do this. And what you start to learn as a PA is that the thing that's valued the most is speed and accuracy. So you need to be able to pick things up very, very quickly. There's like a grace thing where it's like you should know everything within like 3-ish months. You won't be clueless after 3 months.
Okay.
But no, like it's very much like I'm not micromanaged at all. Like I was never micromanaged. It's just like, okay, so I think you can do this. If you don't know how to do this, like it's a space to where like you can ask questions.
Okay.
But like do it at the fastest that you can at your best capacity.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And did you always feel comfortable to ask questions?
Oh, absolutely not. No. Like like in a corporate environment that's that big, like you start to learn like a lot of the software that they have is internal only. Like this software was made here. You can't Google this. Oh, wow. It's nowhere to be found. So it's just like, okay, so it's like playing around with like the different interfaces and seeing like if you can figure it out. But like if you can't within the first few minutes, it's just like you have to, or else like you're delaying other people's progress, and then you're delaying the entire production cycle, and that's the last thing you want.
So give me an example of where you had to ask for help. And how'd you do it?
Okay, so there's this one program that we have where we have to like put our commercials in, but it has to like, this is where we put like all the metadata to the video, so it like shows up on the site.
Okay.
It's like I wasn't quite sure of the process. Like I was listening like an onboarding and taking notes, but like in actual action, I was like, these notes don't make sense. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm like playing around and like plugging into like the UI. And I'm just like, okay, so this isn't matching my notes. I don't know what's going on. So I was like looking at the other PA, and they were just like jamming along. So I was like, okay, she seems nice. Let me just like slack her real quick. I'm not gonna like go up to her and ask. I'm just gonna slack because it like presents that like boundary. Like as a new person, I know I'm probably being annoying with all these questions or like all the questions I will ask. So let me just message you
in the safety of Slack.
Exactly. And then like she came over and just like, yeah, if you have any questions, just like it's better to ask a question than make a huge mistake. It's like, you know what? Touche.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice. Well, I'm glad she ended up being nice. I'm sure it's more comforting to get denied via Slack than to your face, but I'm glad that she was
exactly.
That is awesome. All right, so tell us about some of the things that you're working on at Nick Jr. How long have you been there now?
Let's see. It's about to be 2 years very quickly.
Okay. And are you remote now, or are you still going in? I guess
I'm
pandemic and all.
Yeah, okay. we've been remote since that Friday in March.
Okay. Like most people. Okay.
Like most people. But yeah. Um, I think the project that I'm working on, like that I care or not care most about, but I'm most passionate about, is our diversity, representation, and inclusion project, and that's like passion from like UMich that kind of like followed me into like my work. And that happened after the George Floyd uprisings and protests. It's like me and some of the other POCs and allies of like our floor were on Slacks, like, hey, someone has to do something. We're probably not going to be able to do anything because of like the corporate glacier and what happens when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, let's make something that's empowering, that's uplifting, and the worst that they can say is no. Um, yeah. So then we got like to work from all the way up until now from June. And we're just like now getting funded and greenlit and like getting stuff on air. But we made some music videos that are like about Black empowerment and like AAPI and how that's how it's important for like little kids who are especially like that impressionable. Like our audience is kindergarten to I think five,
Right.
6. Yeah, like those are the moments where you really like form the laws of your reality. And because like we're
Yes.
like their first like base or like their first how do we put it? It's like like they're our first fans or something like that or other. Like this is
Yeah.
the place that they go to for all their content, like mostly.
Yeah.
Like if not like PBS.
You're their main entertainment space at that age.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they've got the channel.
If they have the channel.
Right.
So it's like like it's important. So we created like a music video and like a slam poetry piece with like Alicia Keys like saying Black Sunshine, just so like it airs on the it airs for like a minute or 30 seconds or like just something like throughout the day. Like it's not pushed on them like throughout there. It's like, oh, this is like I don't know, Nickelodeon
DEI
is
hour.
yeah, DEI hour or something like that. It's like, yeah, we're trying to like normalize what should have already been normalized.
That's awesome. Kudos
Yeah.
to you and the team, for even pitching that. And I'm so glad that you were able to pull that forward. That's hard. That's hard. That's a different level. It's hard for people of color. I think it's hard for allies too, who want to do better, who want to see something better. They love their job, they love where they're at, but they're wanting something a little bit more. So it's really affirming, I think, when the company says yes. I think that's awesome. And the age group you're working with is so unique as well, and they need it too. So like when you're making these music videos, were you using character clips and that kind of thing, or were these all like organically made and separate?
We're still making some of those now. Like
Oh, okay.
they're like in production. But yeah, like a lot of it is like using character bites and to the best that we can, but also like trying to like make sure our audience is represented. So that means like a lot of like live action kids like coming in
Nice.
COVID shoots, or like making cartoons that are just like all inclusive and like and represents our audience and people who are like most marginalized.
So we got to know that Paw Patrol loves everybody too.
Paw, yeah, Paw Patrol might be canceled. It may or may not be. I can't confirm. I can't tell you anything. So
what are some other shows that you were able to work on?
Let's see. There's Paw Patrol. There's Baby Shark right now. Baby Shark premieres. Santiago of the Seas. Let's see, Santiago of the Seas. What else is there?
Everyone's gonna know all these names because we're all watching Nick Jr., right?
Yeah, like like if you guys have nieces, nephews, or siblings,
it's fine. They can Google it.
Maybe. Blue's Clues and You. It's like, even as a dog, like maybe it's just because I screen like episodes of it like a day. It's just like maybe it's like, oh, this is kind of entertaining. I don't know if I'm psyching myself out, but yeah, this is great. Yeah, it's been like revamped and everything, and they like put a whole new like 3D animated spin to it. It's great.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, you know, it's still been a short time that you've been there. Do you feel like you're in your dream job?
Do I feel like I'm in my dream job? I don't feel like I'm there, but I'm close.
Hmm.
Like I feel like, or at least one of my mentors, once upon a time, they're like, what really matters is that like learning what you're interested in, and as long as you're like in the vicinity of it,
Yeah,
like if you're like a storyboard art or you want to be a storyboard artist, and like you talk to storyboard artists every day, you're like close enough, or like you're
sure.
almost there. Yeah. So I would say
What are
like
you
my
hoping your next jump is? What would you say is next for you? And is that next still at Nick Jr.? Are you loving that atmosphere where you'd want to grow within the company?
I'm debating like whether it's like Big Nick, which is like Nickelodeon, and it's more like older content, or whether it's like in younger children's media, which is like Nick Jr. Because like I like the fact that we have our content that somewhat it's not only for entertainment, but it's also to like teach them.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's where it's like most impactful. But also I feel like, when you go to like bigger kids, you get to like expand like your creativity in writing a bit more. Like with
sure.
yeah, like with Nick Jr., I can't tell you how many times I've had to like get flagged by legal because like the characters are like swinging from chandeliers. It's like you can't put that in a commercial, and I was like, why not?
You're
Like
gonna make the baby want to swing off
exactly.
a chandelier. That's funny. But yeah, that's important. It's, different emotional, age points and lexicons, and yeah, that matters. Your content and your client matters.
Right. And like I think in terms of like roles, it's I've seen some people do it like at my job who are like producers. They're producers and storyboard artists. So they get to
Okay.
like leverage their like artistic side while like leveraging writing and kind of like merging it. So ideally that's the space that I would want to be in.
So storyboarding?
Storyboarding.
Storyboarding.
Like it's
Okay.
more like being the visionary of the animation and live
Sure.
action than actually animating it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, gotcha. And I love that ability to, sometimes you've got to do it to know what you actually love and don't like.
Yeah.
So, and you can be good at something, but maybe prefer a different part of the process. So it's great to know that it sounds like you're able to see these different parts of the process. And is it fair to say that you're also having conversation with storyboard artists at Nick Jr.?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So already building that network and continuing to network.
Oh, absolutely. Like, especially like now since like a diversity, representation, and inclusion work has been like combined, like entertainment, like we're like infamous for like only using the people that we know and like
Mm.
using our friends. And like our CMO was just like, hey, why don't you use someone that you don't usually use? So there've been like a lot of different vendors that we've been going to, like even like reaching out to them like via like Instagram or like seeing their credits, like, hey, I see you do this. Try it at Nick Jr. for this one project. Or like we'll see how we like you, or like how are your demos in terms of like music, and like let's try to see if we can like work with you on like a music video project or something like that. So I feel like that's
Nice.
really like been expanding the amount of experience or like the amount of like networking I've been able to do, at least on the job.
Right. And it sounds like, I mean, you're putting someone else on into a new work opportunity. So
Yeah.
that's a whole nother level of that work relationship and dynamic. That's really cool. Nice. I'm
Yeah.
so excited. I'm so proud of you. Um, all right. We actually have a good amount of questions. So I'm going to dive into them so that we can learn more about you. Okay. Where can we see the videos created for DEI? Are any of those public?
um, I'm not sure. Wait. Maybe I'm not sure if we put them up yet, but we have
Okay.
something called Nick Helps.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, nickhelps.com. Some of them should be on display there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna drop the link. Nickhelps.com. All right, sweet. All right. How restricting are network guidelines when it comes to representation in children's media?
When you say restrictive, you mean how many people or what kind of like diversity we're trying to show, or?
I think so. Like, are there
Okay.
any rules around that, you know?
Yeah, there aren't any rules. And I think that's mostly like what we've been working on, because like without there being any rules and without like having certain people, only having certain people like in a position of power to like see who gets chosen for what role, and like if they're in this commercial or they're in this spot.
Right.
A lot of people kind of like default to, okay, this person, I might know their mom or dad or things like that. Like that happens. But I think in terms of like diversity, like we've started to like branch out a bit more. It's like, okay, so if we have a white kid, maybe we should have a few black and brown kids in here too. Maybe we should also like vary what type of parents they have, and if what type of sexual orientation their parents have. Are they disabled? Things like that. And like really trying like a little harder, especially like
Sure.
working with like outside consultants on whether we're reflecting our audience.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you have any advice for young artists who want to work up to a position where they have power to influence the representation in children's media?
Um, hmm. At least in a corporate environment, I would say try to find a mentor quickly and find out who wants to invest in you and how you can invest in them as well. Like I think the first thing when I got to like when I first got to Viacom, I was like, okay, you're at T Howard, maybe I can talk to you and like maybe we can do some things. And like some of the people that work with in diversity, it's like they share a similar vision, and we recognized that before we were like working from home. So we
Sure.
just kind of like stayed in contact, and that's how like that nominal power happened. Just because like we were together and we decided, hey, we self volunteered, we're gonna talk to higher ups, and we're gonna hope that they don't shoot us down. And besides like knowing that, it also takes like being brave. Even though you might get pushback, the worst thing that someone can say is no.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel like even with the short time that you've been there, you have had a little bit of influence in the amount of representation? I mean, it sounds like you've even had influence with the small group to create this new type of content in these commercial bits.
Absolutely. Like, and it wasn't like I had no idea it was going to get this far. Like none of us did. um, so like when it comes to like content and when it comes to like representing people in that content, I think I've been able to get that power just by the people that I was around at that time. And especially like when they were looking for like a second PA. And they're like, Yaz is pretty good. Like, ask Yaz. And I pointed directly to the T. Howard Foundation, who like feeds into diverse values. So they're like, okay, now we have two POC PAs.
Nice.
Like, and it
Nice.
just kind of like feeds into one another. So it's like ever growing. It's not just like, okay, you don't feel like a token in the office.
Right. And you continue to put other people on in your community and neighboring communities. And I think that's really great.
Right.
Awesome. All right, we've got another question here. Can you talk a little bit more about your internship at Turner?
Yeah. I'll say that Turner has the work that I did at Turner and the work I do now are completely different, and it's very funny.
Okay.
It's much more like my multidisciplinary minor. So when I was at Turner, I mostly got it because I was like working with like other companies through the MDP program. And I had like experience in project management and like project management. So when I was at Turner, I was working with NBA Digital, and they were like making new products, especially like their streaming site on their smart TVs. So when I was
Mm.
there, I was like beta and alpha testing their software and like going through their products and seeing, okay, how do you sunset or like how do you carry a product through like its entire like cycle? And also like how do you like act as the liaison between like the people who are pitching, the people who are actually making it happen, the graphics department, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's very different. How long was that internship?
Yeah. That was 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And like while I was there, I was like, okay. I was like peeking into like the people who were like in Cartoon Network across the street. Like I was very nosy during that summer. And I was just like trying to get to know everybody. So I was like, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry,
like,
wrong building. I had no idea.
I don't know how I got here on my lunch break. But no, I was like meeting like 3 people a week, like on my lunch break. It's like, hey, you know, you're in art and design. Can you talk to me for like a few seconds, or like getting to like build those relationships, even though it was only like over a short period of time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you said that that role was more closely paired with your minor.
Mm-hmm.
And remind us of the name of your minor.
Multidisciplinary design.
Multidisciplinary design. Okay, and then how would we define that?
I'm not quite sure if you can define it, honestly.
Academic speak.
Academic speak. So mainly it's learning how to be the liaison between like stakeholders and like your audience, and like creating a product that's actually like viable for market, and how to like talk to like engineers, and like how to manage their expectations with the stakeholders' expectations, and also like how to design a product that actually, you know, is within physics.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
I can see how that overlaps with engineering though, because you're having to understand both worlds, design, but also their terms and the terms that they're using over there as well.
Yeah, it's very right brain, left brain as an art dev student over there.
Now, in your role as a junior, do you feel like you're using any of your minor, or do you feel like that was a great secondary skill that, you know, can come in handy one day?
Yeah, actually it came in like perfect. It was great. Like, okay, so like a lot of the software that I was working with at ADP, like Jira and like the whole Atlassian suite.
Yeah.
Like I already knew it when I was like on board. And when we were talking about projects and the project managers were like going over, okay, so we need this amount for like our stakeholders to like appease them. Here's how we manage expectations. I was like, okay, you're speaking my language. I know exactly what you're talking about. This is great.
Nice.
And like when I'm talking to producers, I can easily like translate between them, because like often if you have 2 different departments talk to one another, it gets lost in translation.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you're like a key liaison.
Yeah, just being able to break down that information and like put it so it's actually understandable to other people.
Awesome. And it sounds like it's something that you're just naturally good at.
I mean, I hope so. Yeah. Like, I'm definitely not a type A person. I'm a wannabe type A person.
That's fair. I think it's definitely worth highlighting that, you know, I'm a big proponent of this. I think that all creatives have secondary, tertiary, you name it, just additional skill sets that we can really leverage in our careers. And it's great, you know, in your example, you're able to utilize your minor and those other skills in conversation and some of the work that you're doing at Nick Jr. And then obviously your more direct experiences as an art student is applying when you're designing and doing those things. But I think it's definitely applicable. So for anybody, you know, listening, definitely think about what are your other skill sets that you have. What are you good at? You know, are you easy to work with? Are you, you know, easy to talk to? Are you a good project manager? You know, good scheduler? Any of those kinds of things. Like all those are worthy of being on your resume. Those are worthy of mentioning in a cover letter. And they're definitely going to help push you over the edge in some way, shape, or form, or be another asset to you in your career down the line. So I'm so glad that you were able to put that to use.
Yeah, and it's like transferable skills is like amazing, and I think that stamps kind of like it molds you to being like a multi-hyphenate in a way, because like you have like, especially like the first, second year before you like really know what you're doing.
Sure.
You kind of like are in 2D, you're in like 3D, you're in media
Right.
studies, you're in all these things, and they all come in handy like in some places in your career. Like a few times, like there was something wrong with like 3D models, and I'm like, okay, so it's like 8 at night, this needs to deliver, I can fix this, we're just going to fix this real quick. Like like, and by doing that and by like cultivating those skills or just having those skills in your back pocket, you become an asset.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So, you know, our very first episode, we did talk to Rich, who works at DreamWorks. So just wanted to ask you this question too, because it's a different type of animation role. But in comparison, are you a salary employee or are you working hourly?
Hourly.
Hourly. Okay. At any point in time, might you, lose your job? Do people turn around often? That was something that Rich expressed at DreamWorks, where they kind of work at a project to project basis.
Yeah. I think it's people don't turn around often. Like usually, like if you've done good on one project, they'll like keep you going from project to project to project. Or if like you're like me, like if you're like a department support person, you're on every single project, so it kind of like doesn't apply as much.
Nice. It's a little job security.
It's a little job security. I'll take it. Like, but like something that's outside of that, like a lot of people are permalance when it comes to like, especially like within Viacom CBS.
Ooh, define that. What is that permalance? Is like permanent freelance combination?
It's like your permanent freelance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. All right. I think this might be our last question, but if anybody else has a question, feel free to drop it in. What is your favorite project you've worked on so far in your career?
What's my favorite project I've worked on so far? I'd honestly have to say, and maybe I'm biased because it's in the moment, but my like the logo IDs and music videos for diversity, representation, and inclusion, honestly. And it's mostly because like it takes a lot to be intentional in your storytelling. And like there's been like so many different conversations on like who do you include and how you include them and how do you do without ostracizing other people and things like that. And I think because like that intentionality and that research behind it, it makes it like the most impactful.
I love it. I love it. I love that you're looking to impact people. Trying to do something with your life. Look at you.
I'm trying.
No, I love it. I love it. What role did student orgs play in preparing you for where you are now?
What role did student orgs play? Cool. I was in so much stuff. Wow, man. So like, if I'm thinking back, like I was a what do you call that? I was a DEI representative at Stamps, and then like in Stamps and Color, and I think that feeds into like my latest project. Just like having that, like the background to know like, okay, if you're gonna talk about this, you need to like talk about it with everyone. You need a consensus. How do you make something that's informed? And that also just comes from like being a research university or like being a research-based like art and design school. Like you have to look into these things.
Sure.
Yeah. And besides that, like I think other orgs that were like more community-based, like Detroit Partnership, really formed that need to like provide an impact outside of your art. Like it's not just like I made something, it looks cool, and there's nothing wrong with it just being like looking cool, because like that's amazing and that's like within your own art, that's within your own works, and like you can own that. But like if it impacts someone else just by like virtue of looking at it, I think I did something a little bit more, at least for me personally. And it comes from like my time of like working with other people in the community in Detroit, but also like in Ypsilanti. Yeah. And besides that, like just for work, like just to like play around, like Maze Collective, when I was like doing music stuff or like promoting like community artists or like artists on campus, and like talking to them and like learning how like what their audience looks like, at least from like a university level. It like got me outside of like art and design for a minute, but like still creative.
What was that? What was that club?
Mace Collective.
Mace Collective. Okay. Is it common for PAs to move into other positions after being at Nick for a certain amount of time?
Yeah. So I think at least from what I've seen, PAs are usually PAs for like 3 years, about like three years, and then like you'll become an associate producer.
Okay.
Or yeah,
She's
you'll
got
become
one more year.
I got one more year. Yeah, you'll either become like an associate producer or like you'll move like somewhere else. Like maybe you don't like being like in production. Like maybe you go over to like being a coordinator or like people who like payroll, or maybe you're going into like development and like that's a whole other like realm of moving up in the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And our very last question, how was your experience as a stamp summer assistant?
As a stamp summer assistant. Um, I mean, I liked it. Like, I think like I was giving like big auntie vibes to to the high schoolers there.
Do you want to just tell us what that is, just for those who don't know what a stamp summer assistant is?
Yeah, so I worked in pre-college for 2 summers. And that's mostly just like guiding the students like from their classes and just like really like getting them like a lay of the land of what like UMich is and what that looks like. And like just kind of acting like as a RA slash guidance counselor. It's like someone they can like hop ideas off of, like if they're in the studio late at night or things like that.
And this is a program for high school students.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Awesome. Well, Yazmon, we are right at 7. Please let everyone know what's the best way to keep in contact with you. We're all about creating opportunities for mentorships. Someone might hear this right now or in the future and say, I want Yazmon to be my mentor. So what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
That would probably be through 2 ways. So LinkedIn, it's just my name. I'm probably the only Yazmon Ector on the internet. And Instagram at yazzy.yaz.
Yazzy.yaz. Right.
Okay. First of all, yay, Yazmon, amazing, amazing. And yay, Stephanie, for being an amazing interviewer. So hopefully everybody saw in the chat, there's a link to a survey because this is a pilot program and we really want to make sure that it's working the way that we intend. So if you can, take a couple of minutes, like literally a couple of minutes, it's just that short, to take a look at that and respond so that we can stay on top of this and keep bringing people like Yazmon back. Hopefully one day, maybe even in person. That would be really great. And Stephanie, is there anything else you want to say before we all say goodnight?
No, just thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate, you coming out to listen to Yazmon's story, and just want to echo, please, we're happy to receive any and all feedback on that survey in hopes of offering many more episodes from here to there. So thank you so much.
And Yazmon, you get the last word.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is like an honor to like come back to Stamps and just like I see some familiar faces in like the chat. It's great, but like I really hope that you guys like go forth and like this gives you like something to enhance your experience at Stamps.
Yay. Thank you all so much. Everybody have a good night.
Take care.
Take care. See you.